Welcome back, everybody. So one of the main issues being discussed at the cabinet Lekgotla in Pretoria is the issue of how to fix the country's failing state-owned enterprises. The three-day meeting is expected to focus on Eskom's power generation difficulties and the financial crisis at South African Airways. To discuss this in studio with us, we've got Israel Mkhize. He is a political economist at Bukindaba Group. Good to have you, Israel. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Leah.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty of all of this, because state-owned enterprises, it's something that we talk about all the time, and we always think, okay, is this going to be the end? And it never is, and they keep on going. Many economists already criticizing the NC's decision to save ailing SOEs, saying that the party is oblivious to the state of the economy. What are your views on this?
I actually think that there has to be a fair try to save SOEs that are having a balance sheet that is strained, because you'd have to look at the history of the SOEs and how they evolved over the years. And for common people, from what you see from the media, people would think that there's 3 or 5 state-owned enterprises are usually making the headlines, like your Eskom and SAA, but there's quite a lot, probably over 200 state-owned enterprises, and each has to serve a particular demographic. Fundamentally, the purpose is to ensure that there is a close relationship with the state to become that each SOE within its particular cluster, because they're in different clusters. Some are in the high network road infrastructure, others are in the ICT, others are in energy, like the case of Eskom. So you need to have a comprehensive look and how you cluster them, and which ones are very important and key to the running of the economy. However, the ones that are always in front of our screens, like the SAA, something obviously, a case of try reasonable doubt, so that benefit of a doubt, so that at the end of the day, if the business rescue exercise really proves that the market conditions within the airline space, within the aviation space, are no longer speaking for an existence of the SAA, then different courts will have some degree of satisfaction that something was tried.
Yeah. So let's delve into SA for a little bit, because that's the one right now that we're looking at. We see that the DBSA, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, has come to the rescue, 3 billion into SAA, and people are saying the Development Bank of Southern Africa, couldn't that money be used for better uses, better infrastructure? People were giving examples of pit toilets, of hospital care, of our power stations that need so much help. Why do we need an airline? How much more money must be thrown into this airline to keep it flying, when at the end of the day, I mean, they're just pictures of empty aircraft doing international destinations, and people have lost their faith in SAA. Talk to me about that. How do we justify the DBSA's money?
Well, the fundamental definition of economy, or economics for that matter, is that we try to maximize the scarce resources. Hence the complaint that the resources are scarce. The DBSA could have channeled those resources somewhere else. But again, you must remember that the Minister of Finance has had an adverse opinion against the NEC, and as well as against the cabinet. I mean, sometime it's tweeted that he's actually of the view that maybe we should let go of the SAA. But then he has to balance that with the sentiment, sort of your national pride sentiment, to say that, well, if we throw away the national carrier, of which something along like the unbundling, obviously that's a scary word, but the SAA within, as an entity, it's not only about the planes. There's a lot of your terminal maintenance. There's a lot of assets under the whole portfolio of South African Airways, of which, in my view, maybe it was a bit ambitious to put 3.5 billion for a rescue. But again, the whole notion of trying to give the benefit of a doubt, so that should eventually we have to go against sentiment that we have a national carrier or national pride, at least we tried what we could do. But here's the catch, as far as SAA is concerned. When we opened up the market, South African markets is an open economy, we were also exposing whatever there was of sentiment within the country to competition. Now you get SAA, which obviously would try to brand itself as a high-end sort of carrier. Obviously, they'd have to compensate that with play the economies of scale, compensate that with high prices. Then you get the so-called low-end flights, like your Mango, which came into the market, coming with a low pricing strategy. And people started to flood there. People were no longer interested in saying, I'm sitting in the business class, someone sitting in the economy. People just wanted to get to their destinations. I don't think that SAA caught up with a change in the market. They could have probably used whatever horizontal strategy to say, we want to take a stake at Mango, so that while we maintain that high-end sort of service, we also have a so-called low-end carrier which specializes on low-cost prices, so that they compete in that space. Yeah. They failed to do that. I mean, there's been CEOs. Now you get a business that makes money through bailout. You know, the classical example we say in business, we say, the best place to get money is from your customer. Yeah. But this is not the case.
It's not the case. You're not mentioning the corruption, because this is the big problem, is in these state-owned entities, not, and unfortunately, you know, we always emphasize the state-owned entities, but when you look at private, you know, the private sector as well is full of corruption. It's full of different things and different issues. But SOEs, we scrutinize, we look at them, we know, we see this corruption. I mean, we talk about 16 billion rand being squandered at the airline during, you know, one tenure of a CEO. And these are, I mean, not a CEO, of a board chair. And these are big issues. These are issues that we look into that is now going to cost the economy, and we keep on pumping money into them. The same goes for Eskom. You know, what do we do there when there is always government interference? And that's where many of these SOEs say is the reason why they fail.
Well, the last time we had a chat, Leanne, I remember we were comparing the corruption in the private sector and that in the public sector.
Yeah.
And the reality of the matter, at the point I said, which I still say today, the monies that are managed in the private sector are your shareholders' monies and are your equity investors. But in the case of government, it's the taxpayers' money, and that's where the hand of the law, as it were, has to be very harsh, because each SOE going down, or each government entity going down, I mean, it's straining the fiscus, which is quite slim anyway. So I think the whole process of the state capture, inquiry into the state capture, should assist us in a way to bring finality and a statement of the government's position on what it thinks about corruption, or cases that have been proven beyond reasonable doubt that they're cases of corruption, because we've seen how they deplete the state, which needs so much of this money to pay some of, for instance, the national debt, which is always skyrocketing and taking off what could be spent either on the social cluster and as well as development projects such as infrastructure and so on. So we cannot overlook the corruption issue, but already a solution is under motion that must give us a firm statement. That is why even the Davos conversation, a statement came out there that said, I mean, Richard Quest is quoted as saying that we're calling the foreign direct investment, and they are sitting and waiting and saying who are being charged, who is being put in prison for the cases that are alleged to be corruption once they've been proven by the courts. But the court is obviously going to kick in, I think, as soon as the State Commission is done. Yeah. Then we need to see really where does the government stand on this matter.
What did you make of some of his comments? That opened up a big can of worms. A lot of people were talking about that, and it was a hard thing to listen to, you know, saying that the interest in South Africa at Davos wasn't there the way it has been years before. People are not interested because they don't have faith that South Africa have the will to want to turn things around, where there are all these empty promises and things are going to change, and yet it never seems to. And hence, they're very nervous to come and do business here. What did you make of that?
Well, Quest is quite a big voice in international business, particularly with the international financial markets. And what he says he has listened across board from London investors, from your New York investors, Tokyo investors, etc. And his voice carries quite a lot of weight in the business sector. So we have to listen to that. I mean, because he covers African emerging markets and Asian and South American emerging markets. So we need to take that very seriously, because I don't know why, but we're always drumming this notion of foreign direct investment, foreign capital. Well, I'm not against foreign capital, but there's a lot of capital in South Africa. There's a lot of unharvested entrepreneurial capacity in our country because we lack, I think, to merge policies with scenarios. You're always hammering so hard on policies, economic policies, growth policies, but I don't see much of scenarios because you also need to have a lot of scenarios for an emerging economy or a developing countries to say, if these two driving forces come together, these are the likely scenarios that we would like to see. Then you develop policies per each of the scenarios. You can't have a unanimous policy position and say, we have this one national development plan for all scenarios.
Yeah.
That is why you find that all the time we're sort of missing the targets of the NDP, for instance, which is pointing us at 6% growth, but we're always at minus 1% growth year on year, because we develop a policy and not back it with different scenarios, because you need to develop a policy, have different scenarios. So what we could do to talk to the financial international market is to say, in a scenario that there's growth plus corruption, this is how we are going to react. In a scenario that there is strengthening of the law, these are the scenarios that you can look at, so that the international investors can then say, okay, these are the high roads, these are the low roads, then that's where we can put our money. Under those conditions, that's where we can put our money.
Let's turn our attention to the finance minister and have a look at his position and party stance on the future of SOEs. Mboweni, ANC, are the two seeing eye to eye right now?
Well, I think it's the culture of the ANC that people must air their views. And obviously there's a notion or a term they use which is called democratic centralism. You have people like Mr. Kulumba who have published and say, no, let's do away with those concepts. They are Stalinist in their approach. They're not good for open markets and open economies like ours. So you get Tito, he sits on the ANC and then he goes to Twitter, he says something else.
Yeah.
I think to some extent it's good for the ANC because the ANC doesn't lead itself. It's leading society. So he has to sometimes you have to have someone from the inner cycle to speak the sentiments of society. If society disagrees with the NEC, someone from the NEC must actually voice those things that are said by the society. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to voting, it's not the NEC that votes. It's not the NEC only that votes. It's the community, society, it's people out there, South Africans. So sometimes you find that the minister will just say, in the interest of being a devil's advocate and to capture the sentiment of society, that is to vote at the end of the day, which we are leading, let me just, throw up some feathers and ruffle the boat. Yeah.
And he does a very good job at that.
Well, he's quite intelligent. Mind you, that is perhaps only two guys now in this cabinet who were there in the 94 cabinet. It's himself and Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma.
Yeah.
So some of excitements and whatever that are being said, he's a professor of economics. Some of the things that are being said, he's known them for years and he knows what works and he knows what... It's quite... doesn't have a pleasing tongue.
No.
It's just a straight shooter.
Exactly, straight shooter and we never know which direction that bullet's going to go. So let's wrap it up. The Cabinet Lekgotla is carrying on this week, should be ending tomorrow, I think. Some of the things that should come out. What is the most urgent, pressing issue that they need to attend to?
I think the most pressing issue is to make that final call to remove Eskom from the SOEs into the energy department.
Is that going to make a difference?
It will, because by nature, the SOEs are supposed to be your little venture capital of government. But Eskom is a more deeper and broader mandate than to be a little venture capital for government. It's sort of a source, a backbone, it's an energy backbone of the entire economy. So it needs a particular concentration and some degree of focus, So I think that has to be on board. And secondly, they have to say something quite clear about the land reform question, so that I know it's time around elections now, there's elections next year, but people, what they say, you can fool people sometime, but you cannot fool people all the time. There's a growing despondency at the bottom of the line of the economy where people need clarity on on those things, and also the question of jobs. We cannot have month on month, quarter on quarter, year on year, an increase in the statistics of job losses and joblessness. You know, those are the three things I think that need to focus on.
We'll leave it there for this morning. Thanks for chatting to us.
Thanks so much for
Israel Mkhize is a political economist at Bukindaba Group, talking to us about the cabinet and what they should be discussing to fix the country's state-owned entities in light of the cabinet Lekgotla that's currently underway in Pretoria. Let's take a break. Sakina will bring us the news at 7.